Hello, traveler. You know that moment when life feels too loud, overwhelmingly loud. The opinions, the comparisons, the expectations, everything shouting at the same time until you completely forget to hear your own voice, until you can't even remember what your own truth sounds like anymore. Silence in this chaotic world has become an act of rebellion, a gesture of power. And that brings us to today's lesson. We're going to talk about the power of silencing the world for a moment and focusing on yourself. Not to escape reality, not to hide from what needs to be done, but to reconnect with who you truly are. Because it is in that silence that reinvention happens. It is there, away from external noise and distractions, that the strength is born that carries you forward until you get there, until you reach where you are meant to be. Reinventing ourselves is one of the most challenging tasks of human existence. It is painful, it is confusing, and it is often lonely, especially because the human brain tends to resist change. Not because you don't want to evolve, not because you lack ambition or desire, but because your nervous system interprets novelty as a possible threat. In other words, changing requires courage, because biologically you are going against your own comfort zone, fighting your own wiring. And the truth is that most people spend their entire lives running from change. We prefer to blame fate, blame the boss, blame the government, blame the family, anything at all, as long as we don't have to look inward. But true progress begins exactly there, right at that point when you stop pointing outward and start observing yourself with the greatest honesty possible. The psychology of self-awareness, especially the theory of active self-reflection, shows that people who analyze themselves without judgment are more capable of making real changes, because they understand that the problem isn't the world. The problem is how they react to the world, how they interpret and respond to what happens around them. And it is at this point that silence becomes a tool, becomes powerful. When you stop arguing, stop justifying yourself, stop defending yourself to others, the noise dissipates, and what remains is truth. What remains is what really needs to be worked on within you. So reinventing yourself is a process of permanent self-observation. It is about becoming so conscious of your own flaws, your own patterns, that no external criticism can shake you anymore, because you understand what truly needs to change. And even with fear, even with uncertainty, you move forward. Because whoever decides to evolve also decides to abandon excuses, to stop hiding behind justifications. Because here is what happens. After you start truly looking at yourself, another challenge emerges. Clarity. Having clarity is like turning on a light in a room you never had the courage to properly explore before. Suddenly everything becomes visible. You see what serves you, you see what sabotages you, and you see what no longer makes sense in your life. What has been dead weight you've been carrying for no good reason. Cognitive neuroscience explains that when you have clarity, when you define with precision what you want, your brain automatically begins to signal what doesn't align with that objective. And that is when you start perceiving the incongruences, the habits, the routines, even the thoughts that keep you trapped in the old version of yourself. It is a deeply uncomfortable moment, because clarity doesn't come to please you. It comes to confront you. It shows how much you sabotage yourself by accepting less than you deserve, how much you distract yourself trying to please people who don't even pay attention to you, who don't even notice your effort, and how much energy you waste fighting for things that aren't even worth all that effort, all that sacrifice. So when clarity appears, chaos loses its power over you. And this is liberating, truly liberating. And you know why? Because in this process of rediscovering yourself, there exists a wonderful mental tool you can learn to use, a highly transformative form of detachment. But the rule is simple. Just let people be as they are. Let them judge you. Let them criticize you. Let them underestimate you, ignore you, or even laugh at your choices. Because here is the central point. None of that has anything to do with you. None of it. Your well-being is directly related to your autonomy, to your capacity to act guided by your own values, and not by external pressures, not by what others think you should do. And when you adopt the mentality of letting others be, that is when you begin to recover this autonomy. You stop reacting to negativity. You stop spending energy trying to control the uncontrollable, and you finally shift your focus to what truly matters: your growth, your evolution, your journey. This perspective is actually a modern form of practicing emotional regulation, because by not reacting impulsively to criticism, you activate brain regions linked to calm and self-control, like the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, while reducing activity in areas responsible for intense emotional responses. In other words, letting go isn't weakness, it is applied emotional intelligence. And when you finally understand that other people's behavior speaks more about them than about you, your peace arrives. You stop losing yourself trying to prove your worth, because your worth doesn't need to be proven. It manifests itself in silence, through your consistent and serene journey. Simple as that. Because a person can be talented, can even be lucky, but if they're not consistent, they won't go very far. The neuroscience of habit formation shows that success is basically the result of small actions repeated until they become automatic. Consistency shapes the brain until it creates habit. When you repeat an action every day, the neural connections associated with it strengthen. It is a phenomenon called repetition-dependent neuroplasticity, and this means that over time what was once effort becomes habit. The discipline that was forced at first becomes part of your identity, part of who you are. That is why the people who grow the most aren't the most talented. They're the most committed. They show up even when they're tired, even when nobody's applauding, even when the work feels invisible. And consistency isn't about doing a lot. It is about doing right, and at the right time. It is about understanding that progress doesn't come from speed or quantity, but from direction and persistence. You can run fast in the wrong direction and get nowhere, or you can walk steadily toward your goal and eventually arrive. And in the end, everything comes back to the same point: silence. Because it is in silence that you hear what the noise of the world tries to drown out. You hear your own intuition, your own inner voice, your own truth speaking clearly without interference. So stop explaining yourself. Stop trying to convince others who aren't willing to understand. Stop seeking validation where there is no comprehension. Just focus on yourself. Work in silence. Grow in silence. And let the results make the noise for you. Let your transformation speak louder than any words could. Reinventing yourself is painful, yes, but what comes after is pure freedom. Remember this: clarity will push away what doesn't fit anymore. It will naturally eliminate what is not aligned with where you are going, and consistency will inevitably carry you to your objective, to your destination. Silence isn't absence, it is presence. The presence of someone who knows where they're going, who has a clear vision and doesn't need constant external validation to keep moving forward. So focus on yourself until you get there. Focus on your growth, your healing, your evolution, and trust that in that focused silence, you are building something that can never be taken from you. Stay safe, traveler. I'll see you on our next journey.